Henry T. Segerstrom first approached Isamu Noguchi in 1979 with the idea of building a 1.6-acre park as part of his new South Coast Plaza Town Center in Costa Mesa, located in California's Orange County. The Segerstrom family had once been the largest farmer of lima beans in America, and it was Henry Segerstrom who envisioned the development of the architectural lands into a larger civic and cultural environment that would enrich his community. Noguchi was skeptical when Segerstrom first contacted him. Through visits and correspondence, a mutual respect and trust emerged, resulting in California Scenario, a 6-element work containing pathways, fountains, and sculpture. An inspired jewel in America's public art lexicon, it is underscored by the equally remarkable artist-patron relationship. Begun in 1980 and completed in 1982, the garden has been attentively maintained through the commitment of Henry Segerstrom. In an interview with Kathy Curtis of the Los Angeles Times in January 1989, shortly after Noguchi's death, Segerstrom recalled his working relationship with the artist. He opened this one briefcase and pulled out a board. It was probably 20 inches by 20 inches. On it were drawn the elements of the garden. Then he took several small models out of his case, placed them where each of the elements of the garden were to go, and described them to me. I said, "Isamu, what do you call this?" And he said, "California Scenario." I was so convinced of the purity of what he had created that I told him I thought it was absolutely perfect. He had a singular ability to translate the scope of the universe, the size of the state of California, into symbolic elements that could be placed on a small-scale area. So the die was cast. There was no redesign. He was very pleased. Then I had a second thought, almost a remorseful one, and that is that I'd been successful in getting the man I considered the greatest living sculptor to do a commission which I knew was going to be a significant artistic contribution to the state of California, and yet when it was finished, it would contain nothing by his own hand. So once again I sat down and wrote a letter in longhand, telling him how pleased I was that he accepted the commission, but that I would like to have something in the garden that was done by his hands as well as his mind. And we began the negotiations for a sculpture that culminated in the agreement to do a piece which originally he entitled The Source of Life, and which later, in respect for my family background, he renamed The Spirit of the Lima Bean. While we waited for the construction of the garden to begin, the selection of the materials had become the paramount question. Isamu wanted the garden to be entirely of natural materials that would weather and age and blend with the natural world. He always said he would like to have little weeds grow up between the stones as the mortar cracked because he wanted the garden to return to nature. And he thought that it would probably take 10 years of weathering before the garden would finally convey its true meaning. We spent time going to the Huntington Library, looking for material. The choice of the sandstone in the garden was also very important to him. Isamu spoke of his conviction that stone was the most important element in nature. We looked at some from Mexico and California, and finally found stone from Arizona that we thought was good. So Isamu, my son Torin, and I chartered an airplane and flew there. During the flight back, I asked if he had ever worked with a developer before, and he said no, because I never trusted any of them. I always considered that the greatest compliment I ever received from him. Isamu came here and spent several days directing the placement of rock and completing the design. We had reconstructed the walls of the parking structure so that they became a flat surface, and they were plastered and painted white. I mentioned to Isamu that this would make a wonderful theater. I knew that he had worked with Martha Graham in the theater. He didn't react too much, but the next morning we had breakfast and he said, "Henry, I think we should have your theater." We designed a marvelous lighting system that transformed the garden at night. We had a lighting consultant, but essentially we implemented Isamu's ideas, and the lighting consultant was more or less a mechanic. The same thing was true of the energy fountain. The fountain consultant hadn't achieved proper control over the water, and the splash was much too great when it came out the top. It was Isamu's idea to raise the stainless steel cone above the base to release part of the water so it would absorb the splash. Over and over again, he was the one who made the final design decisions. The thing that was particularly gratifying to me was Isamu's tribute to the state of California, his recognition of his birthplace, which had always rather been ignored. I believe he considered California Scenario his finest garden.